Okay, can you start?
Shut up.
We're here.
You ready now?
We're ready.
Can I start?
Yes, thank you.
So let's go ahead and get started. It's December 6th, 2022, and it is 6 p.m. We're down here in the mill at the Sawyer's Room in downtown Lake Stevens. We're also online on Zoom. If you wish to see us there, this meeting will be posted on our YouTube channel later, and I'll call this meeting to order, and I'll ask all to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Daughtry,
Present.
Councilmember Peter Shagan,
Present.
Councilmember Frederick,
Here.
Councilmember Dickinson. Present. Councilmember Jorstad.
Here.
Councilmember Ewing,
Present.
Councilmember Tadman.
Here. And President, can we get an approval of the agenda? And item number 5, we're gonna hold off until Doug shows up. He's caught into traffic. So when he shows up, we'll do item number 5.
All right, any adjustments to the agenda as written? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So moved. Second.
Got a first and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor, you've got an agenda.
Excellent, thank you. Let's go into citizens' comments, and how we do citizens' comments is we ask first online for anyone to raise their digital hand. Let us know that you wish to provide citizens' comments, and then we go to in person. Do we have any green sheets today or?
No.
Okay. For in person and during citizens' comments, you're allowed 3 minutes to address the council. Okay. With that, is there anyone online who wishes to provide citizens' comments to the council? Please raise your digital hand.
I am not seeing anybody.
Okay, and no one in person? Okay, so we'll move forward then to action items. Action item 7A, ordinance 1154, Barb.
Thank you, council. Ordinance 1154 amends the 2023 budget ordinance only to update the salary range table attached to the ordinance itself for the non-exempt employees. There's no monetary effect as we're not amending any revenues, expenditures, or fund balances. As the amounts related to the market rate study were correctly included in the budget. So this is just the attachment. The incorrect attachment was attached to the ordinance. Since we're not technically amending the budget, we only have to do one reading on this, which is why we're not doing it as 2 separate readings. So that is not required at this point. So the only thing this does is adopt the non-exempt range table at the correct amounts that council approved at the 60 percentile, 6% COLA.
Okay, do you have any questions for staff?
I move to approve ordinance 1154.
Second.
You have a motion to approve ordinance 1154 and a second. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Let's go to 7B. Barb again.
Thank you. This is the amendment to the Lake Stevens Food Bank funding agreement. As council remembers, the council approved Lake Stevens Community Food Bank funding not to exceed $500,000. At that same meeting, president of the food bank, Sabina Nunez, came back to the council and asked for an additional $450,000. That was approved by council during the next meeting. We sent that agreement to the food bank, and their board had unanimously voted not to approve the agreement due to a number of covenants that were included in the agreement as background information that related to those covenants and the real estate purchase and sale agreement. So the city staff and food bank staff, we met and we reviewed the contract language with our attorneys and agreed to that the references to the real estate purchase sale agreement and those covenants were not appropriate within this funding agreement. And so those covenants are still separate and they still remain intact. The food bank has also requested to review those covenants related to the real estate purchase and sale agreement, and that will come back later as a completely separate item. So the only changes we made to the contract are those that were related to the covenants, including the contract duration. We updated the timeline through 20 years versus the life of the building. This is in line with the Snohomish County grant agreement. We removed all whereas statements pertaining to the real estate purchase and sale agreement and the covenants and the lease agreements. Again, those will come back separately. The term of agreement, again, that's the 20 years following the date of occupancy. We updated the reporting requirements and changed to annual versus quarterly reporting to city council. We allowed them to either make that via email, letter, or in person. It was recommended that they come in person and talk to you, as this is obviously a very important subject for council. We did change certification of funds. There was a requirement that in-kind contributions were subject to city approval, and that came from the county agreement. Since we're not requesting any matching funds, we removed that requirement for the in-kind contributions be coming through the city for approval. And so the food bank did take this to their board. I heard from Sophina, they did approve unanimously to approve the agreement as amended.
So do we need a motion to accept the amendment? Is that what we're
Yes.
looking for? Okay. Any questions for Barb?
I don't have a question for Barb. We do have Sofina Nunez, the president of the food bank here. I mean, are there any comments that you would offer in addition to what Barb shared?
There was a lot of work,
Excellent.
I move that we approve the amendment to the Lake Stevens Food Bank funding agreement that's been submitted.
Second. Okay, so I have a motion to amend the Lake Stevens Food Bank funding agreement, and I have a second. Do I have any discussion on the motion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Yeah. All right, so with that, I'm going to suspend holding, I'm going to hold off on moving to item 8 because our guest of honor has arrived in the meeting room, and would love to go back to 5A, recognition of Doug Levy as city's lobbyist. I think what we want to do, Doug, why don't you and I hit the podium? Okay. I would love to recognize some of your achievements and then give you some time and we have a presentation. Make sure we hit the microphone here. So
Yeah.
here online. So Doug Levy has been our lobbyist since 2013. It's a long time. There's a lot of things that Doug has done. Doug is not only our lobbyist, but I consider him a friend, compadre, with all the work we've done within Lake Stevens. And it was funny, so we wanted to talk about some of the things that Doug has done, mostly for the city of Lake Stevens. And when I got the list, I thought, wow, we tried to keep your meetings to just 2 hours. So that I thought, all right, I better highlight some of the highlights. Well, I think I can't, we're gonna give you the time, Doug, you deserve it. So I want to go through what Doug has done for the city of Lake Stevens so the citizens know. It's pretty impressive. And it's also, as I was going through, it's really a kind of what we've done in the last several years, build up. Don't get me crying, Mary, don't do that. You know how sensitive I am. It's really a timeline of what the city has done, grown and built, and a major factor in this is so we first hired Doug in 2013 with the idea of using him to work on SR9 and code issues. In 2015, Doug helped through the Connecting Washington process to get 69 $1.5 million, and you are now seeing the fruition of that through the roundabouts they're going through at 9204 and all the improvements that we're seeing up there at Frontier Village. Later obtained $2 million for the SR 9 and 204 area access at Costco, so we're seeing that right now. As well as $420,000 for that little street that goes between 4th Street and so you get into Starbucks on the south end side, right? That little street. So Doug was in on that. 2020, the year in which there were virtually no transportation projects that year. That was the year of the whole COVID thing. He was able to get $1 million that we absolutely needed as a city to fund the culvert that's part of the Costco project underneath South Lake Stevens Road on the east side of the 9. We also worked to ensure during that time frame, the governor, the next section, the governor was looking to defer all of the projects of connecting Washington, and Doug worked hard to make sure that our 9 and 204 project continued. And so over his time frame here, we received $75 million in the area of Lake Stevens, supporting our transportation projects. He's worked tirelessly on the trestle project, as we all know, is a big deal for the city of Lake Stevens. And over his time working with us, we've secured $210 million in this last session to do some planning, some engineering, as well as to do some interchange justification work. That total is a $215 million ask for the US 2 trestle. It's worked hard on. Now we get into some really cool stuff, I think. So Civic Center North Oak Park. He helped secure $7 million for the rebuilding and leveling out of the Civic Center. The construction of the mill building we're currently in, and the build out of the North Oak Park. Improvements to our building. So yeah, $7 million. So Doug Levy, big key part in what we're literally sitting in today, and what hundreds of families enjoy, not only in the summer, but at Harvest Fest and Winter Fest. Doug Levy key in making sure that we were able to bring that money. Remember, it's not Olympia's money, it's our money, and it goes to Olympia. So the more we get back from Olympia, the better, right? Doug's key. Doug, Horse and Trails, Doug helped out $500,000 with the Caballero skate park. In the 15-17 capital budget, $1.3 million for the South Lake Stevens multi-use trail in 2018. That's the trail that goes from the South Bridge up to Common. And then another $3 million in last year's budget that will take that trail from all the way up to Costco. Additionally, $2.5 million for the 16th Street northeast to Centennial Trail connector. So 16th Street is the street in front of Boyd Grill Club, and so we have $2.5 million that will help us improve that street down to the Centennial Trail. Doug worked on that. We obtained $125,000 for Frontier Heights Park. So total funding for parks and trails in the city of Lake Stevens, Doug has worked hard at $7.5 million. So it's impressive. Other transportation projects we currently have in a federal ask that we hopefully will see passed by the end of the year. $2.5 million for a roundabout that would go in at 20th and Main Street. It's right here by Francisco, and no, we will not take out the chicken. Will not do that, man. And then we secured $1.82 million to do the HOV lane, actually multi purpose lane down 20th Street Southeast. Additionally, Doug has worked on a bill that helped out with local property tax incentives to recruit industrial development. And then additionally, increase the ability for councilman to sell tax authority on transportation benefit districts. He's made sure, one of the things you don't realize is oftentimes during the legislature, the state likes to pull back what they call shared revenues. And so the cities are always fighting Olympia, hey, don't take that away from us, we need it more than you do. And so there's always that fight that Doug has been working on Olympia and keeping us aware of. We fought during the COVID time. There was a lot of ARPA money that went to the state, and we made sure that a lot of that money came back into the cities and the counties. Last year, we worked a piece of legislation on marijuana revenue. The outcome of that was increasing the amount of excise money that comes back to the cities instead of into the Olympia general budget. He's done a number of lobbying for police reform and law enforcement bills to include money to make sure that a lot of times Olympia will pass bills but not have money for the cities to implement those bills. And so that's reallocating money back to the city to help us work on those bills. He's constantly, every year, we talk to the Olympia about the basic law enforcement academy training classes and increasing the number of classes so that we have more slots for police officers to be able to get training, get them out on the streets. What else we got here? A lot of work on public disclosure requests. If you don't know, cities spend an immense amount of time on public disclosure requests, and oftentimes they are many of them are legitimate, and oftentimes they're done by bots. And so it takes a lot of our clerks' time. Fought for new sales tax credits and sales tax options. For reporting fees for affordable housing. Worked on increased gas tax distribution and grant funding for complete streets. Worked on streams of funding for our mental health field response with our folks out who work with the police officers. Tax increment financing authority for cities, and of course, always fighting off bad bills that would impact our cities. Just and a minute, it's a great resume. I'm gonna be honest with that. It's great. It's been awesome to work with you. Both Doug and I are early risers, so oftentimes our discussion is at about 5 a.m. I'm probably still in the pajamas, and that's okay. He doesn't know that. But that's usually the best time to get with Doug and see what's going on and plan ahead, especially during the legislative session. So Doug, we want to give you a very small token of our appreciation. If you want to bring that up, that'd be great. And then I'll give you that. So on behalf of the city, we have this little plaque made. And we'd love to have you hang it up on your wall of the now will be a room of writing. And it'll be great to see what comes out of that room now. It says, City of Lake Stevens, Doug Levy, city lobbyist and grateful appreciation for a decade of outstanding service and commitment to the citizens of Lake Stevens. Thank you. 2013 to 2022. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Well, those were very kind words. And I guess what I want to say in reflecting some of those kind of words is that things don't get done in Olympia with one man or one woman crusades. So Olympia is it's team sport down there in the Washington State Legislature and at the federal level and anytime you're working on intergovernmental relations. So, you know, when I hear that list, the word that comes into my mind is we. We, the community of Lake Stevens, have worked on these things for a decade, and the other word that comes to my mind is just proud. You know, just even walking in here, we had a meeting the other day, and walking here to the mill and seeing everything lit up, and the civic center that didn't used to exist a few years ago, right? And being able to drive on Main Street and know that there was a lake right there. Remember, we didn't used to see that very well a few years ago. Former Mayor Spencer talked about putting the lake back in Lake Stevens, right? And you know, all these roundabouts on SR9 and Cavalier Skate Park and all these things we're talking about. So that's what we, you know, I've done that on behalf of the city, and the city does that on behalf of the community. And I don't know about you, I sometimes get frustrated because you watch the national news and it just seems like a nationwide food fight every night. And that's so sad in so many ways, but then you forget, you know, if you get too much of your evening news and your CNN, you forget that there are thousands of rooms like this one where people are getting things done. The local communities. And of course, I know there's times you in the audience don't agree with what the council is doing, and I know there's going to be issues that come up, and it's that way in every community, but by and large, the mayor and I were talking about this the other day. The great thing about local city councils is they're very rarely about Democrats or Republicans. They're just about 7 people in the community, and you know, dedicated city administrators like Dean who are doing things and getting things done. So it's just been my pleasure to work with all of you all these years on all of these projects and so many more. A little story for those that don't know, when my first exposure to Snohomish County started back in 1994, I worked for the city of Everett. And I was full time with the city, and then I hung out my own shingle and started my own business in October of 1999, and I was representing cities and some others. And about 2003, 2004, I got a call from a guy in Seattle who asked if I would be interested in helping to head up intergovernmental relations for the city of Seattle. And I still vividly remember going home with my wife that night and thinking, why in the world would I want to do that? And I'm not knocking the city of Seattle. It's a world-class city. We're all part of the region, and you know, we all benefit from a lot of things in Seattle. But I don't know how anyone does anything but get chewed up and spit out in places like Seattle. And I've always loved the fact that I can come to cities like this one and work with people and see them and know them, and know they have projects that'll be difference makers in their communities. And that's the stuff that I've really enjoyed working on through the years. So the other thing I'll just say is to the audience, you have all these people beyond your 7 policymakers, beyond your mayor, beyond your city administrator, who do all this work that you don't even know about. You know, and many of them are sitting over there, and they don't say much during these council meetings, but all the wheels of local government, they're the ones turning them, right? So getting a little choked up here, but you know, Russ and Chief and Aaron Halverson and Barbara Stevens and all these people, super dedicated to what they do, right? And making this a community that you all feel really proud to live in. So it's just been my pleasure to work for you all, serve you all. I've, so that you know, I've been at this nearly 30 years. I've decided, you know, the Olympia lobbying stuff at some point needed to draw to a close, so the mayor was alluding to writing. I've got a couple books I want to try and write, nonfiction. Still maybe do some consulting on the side. Got a wife who's been through about 30 years of her own with Microsoft and Amazon, and we've looked at the world, and there are a lot of places we haven't gone to yet. So if COVID's taught us anything these last couple of years, it's that things change on a dime, and you don't know, and so we want to learn a little bit more about this world we live in, but you know, Mayor, you thank me. It's thanks to all of you and what we've done together. So appreciate it very much. I've loved the 10 years working for and with all of you on behalf of the city and community. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Hmm. All right, let's get into some good stuff.
That was the.
That's good stuff. That is good stuff.
So I moved to, yeah. Let's go to our code enforcement update. This is good stuff. That's what it's about. Russ and Cam.
All right, thank you, council. So tonight wanted to take the opportunity to chat with you a little bit about our code enforcement program and what we do, and reintroduce you to Cameron Fouth, our code enforcement inspector, who's out there every day, and he'll talk in a little bit more detail about some of the things that he's working on. So our code enforcement program is largely complaint driven. What that means is, as the city receives complaints from citizens through our online portal or through direct calls to the city, we will go out and investigate potential problems. So usually a two-step process: go out, take a look at what's been reported, and then we make a decision. Is there a violation or is there not a violation? If there is a violation, then we start a formal process where we do an introductory letter to responsible party, which is followed up with a request for voluntary correction if we do find that the violation is valid. If we don't get to voluntary correction, then we get more aggressive with our enforcement process, going to a notice of violation, which carries with it a series of different penalties that can be levied against the individuals. So our first priority is education. We look at public health, we look at environmental health, and some of these other issues as we make those decisions. And anyway, with Cameron being here tonight, I thought it would be really nice if you could also just hear from him directly. And beyond, I'll step back just a couple of steps. So beyond the basic approach to code enforcement, we've also established some priorities for the year. In 2022, we wanted to look at the Hartford area, specifically be on point for the odor complaints that come in with our 20th Street corridor. That's been an emphasis area. And then through the political season and just general sign debris and signage around the city, we wanted to make sure that we were on top of that. So with that, I will invite Cameron up to make some comments to the council, and then we invite any comments from you. You can either come up here, go to the podium, whatever you're comfortable with.
That's been awesome introduction. And it's good to be back here. You can see some of the faces that I've.
Cameron, you might move the microphone closer to make sure people online can hear you. Thank you.
Tell a little bit better.
Yes.
Okay. Again, thank you, Russ, for the awesome introduction. It's great to be back up here to see so many faces that I've only seen intermittently during my short time here. To kind of build off of what Russ said, some of the things that I've been focusing on here in the city, and some of the high priority areas like 20th Street Southeast, the Hartford area, the commercial area off of SR9. And following up with a lot of the complaints from the citizens that come through on some new properties, following up on investigations, talking to people, educating. The recent political sign cleanup has been a lot of work. We built a little over 300 plus signs in the city. The windstorm helped a little bit, so. I've made it a point to kind of stop and talk with each of the marijuana facilities as well as some of the other odor interest areas off of Hartford there. So I stop by each quarter, deliver a letter, speak with management there. And so far I haven't been super happy about driving through there, so I know that the odor compliance is working. We're working on a quarterly education about common code cases for the public, which will be going up on the website. We're kind of working on redeveloping the code enforcement portion of the website to make it more informative. Answer some of the commonly asked questions about things like that building, retaining walls, how to get permits through that process. Through the website, or a lot of common questions that come in from people who reach out by City Hall to ask those questions in person. One of my larger projects is I'm currently working on a site triangle analysis for every intersection in the city, starting with the high impact areas like Hartford and 20th Street and SR9. That's going to be a long project, making sure that each site triangle, when you come up to a stop sign or approach an intersection, can be safely viewed from every viewpoint. That includes taking photos, talking with the planners, and running that through the feedback process from Carol and us. And finally, we're working on some of the short-term rental stuff, sending out letters to those sites and locations, making sure that the owners are made aware of the restrictions as they stand currently, as well as some of the work that's being done both by the city council and the mayor's office, and working on getting those notifications out as well.
I'll just add on really quickly. So code enforcement isn't just one person, it's a team. It's within planning and community development. It's the building team, it's the planners, work with Public Works a lot with the site triangle example. So that would be us doing some of the reconnaissance, determining if it's property owners that we need to educate, or if it's Public Works that needs to take care of some of these obstructions. And we also work closely with our police department. So for example, if we get a code complaint about a nuisance vehicle, if it's on the street, we send it over to PD. If it's on a private property, then that would be the code enforcement officer's responsibility to make that outreach. And then we participate in our homeless camp group that's really headed up by the police department, but code enforcement's responsibility would be doing the outreach to affected property owners to make sure that they know about the issue and that we have the ability to go on those properties and make corrections as needed. So.
Do we have some time for questions?
Absolutely.
Cameron, thank you for putting this together. And hopefully this kind of becomes an annual event, I guess, is to report and so forth, so that we can know what's going on in the community as far as our constituents contacting us and either complaining or complimenting about what's going on. So a couple of questions I have for you. Just on the report that you put together, it says staff responds to all complaints received in a timely manner. Do you have, is there a goal or a date or time frame that you respond to these things, or what is a timely manner?
So any complaints that we get are always based off of priority. Primarily, it's life safety first. Anything that has the possibility of causing harm, damage to people or property, followed by environmental. It's kind of hard to put an exact response time on that, but at a minimum, I always try to contact the issuer of the complaint same day, if anything, at least by phone, just to follow up and get the code case into the system and kind of do some of the preliminary groundwork. Investigations, follow-up, sending out letters. It's kind of difficult to put an exact time frame on that because everything is classified differently and we're constantly prioritizing based on what comes out.
So I guess the answer to your question is the minute you receive a complaint, you try to respond in 24, 48 hours to that
Yeah.
complaint.
Yes,
You should say, hey, we got your complaint and we're working on it. We'll get back to you and so forth.
Yes.
Okay, great. I would encourage that not only you talk about the quarterly education is achieved by on-site meetings, website flyers, postings. I would hope maybe at the minimum, once a year, we send out a flyer or something to the citizens that say we do have a code enforcement section. A lot of people don't even know we have that because in the past it's been very lax. And not everybody goes to the website. So hopefully we can do a little more outreach on that. The short-term rental issue. How are you going about and what are the expectations? I guess we've got another 2.5 months roughly of devising a new regulation. What are your activities in the meantime about getting the existing facilities in compliance? We don't know for certain that we're going to pass a new ordinance come February or March. I'm assuming we will. But what do you do in the meantime? And I guess the issue is, why haven't we done something previously to bring these folks into compliance?
Well, let me address what we're doing right now first. So currently, we're reaching out and doing research on to identify all of the short-term rentals within the city. And we're sending out a letter right now that is addressing the current restrictions, which are that no more than 10 consecutive days of rentals and a maximum of 30 days per year with the appropriate permitting. In regards to the second part of this question, I'm fairly new to the role and I don't think I can adequately address that, Russ.
Sure. Excuse me. Sure. I'm happy to answer the second part. So just a little bit more on the first part. So we have sent out letters. We've asked that, current operators, cease operation, and they can either wait until new rules are in effect, or they can make application through the tourist home rules that are in effect today. Earlier in the process, we had sent out letters to this group before, also alerting them of the fact that they were operating without appropriate approvals and that we were in the process of updating codes. We all assumed that this process would have been completed. So there had been some initial outreach, but as it continues to drag on, and now that we have a fairly concrete list, we felt it was appropriate to put all these folks on notice of, the current regulations and what their current paths are.
I guess the follow-up to that is there a deadline or is you put them on notice? What does that mean?
Can you speak to what the language in your letter was?
So essentially it's the letter is requesting that all of the short-term rental operations for the addresses identified halt and that the appropriate immediate and that the appropriate permitting be applied for and acquired before any additional rental activities can continue. Those are going out via certified mail to each individual address and to the owner's addresses as well.
So they haven't been sent out yet, or they've been sent out?
In the process.
Okay, so you're going to send those out soon?
I've started the process. I have sent about, I want to say roughly 10 of them out of the 28 currently. Because of the language involved and because I'm still new to my role and receiving mentorship from Ross and Carol. I'm making absolutely certain that each letter is as accurate as possible before they go out. So it's taking me a little while to develop that.
Okay. I would encourage that we get that done as soon as possible. This has been a lingering issue. And I think one thing that I've learned from the STR discussions is I think, the folks out there that are affected or objected to the regulations or the proposed regulations. The underlying current is we haven't enforced what we've had on our books. And so there's that skepticism that we're going to do what we actually say we're going to do. So I'm encouraging you to act with the utmost urgency. And if we not have an ordinance this spring, and these folks that are currently operating are obviously not operating under our regulatory environment. So we need to bring them into compliance. So I would encourage again you to do everything as expedient as possible to get those folks regulated. So appreciate your efforts, and I think that's all the questions I have right now. So thank you.
So I have another question, follow-up question with the SDRs that you're sending these letters to. What is the definition of the SDRs that you're sending these out to? The ordinance that we were going to do was less than 30 days. Is that what the definition is of an SDR? Refresh my memory because I can't remember.
So the current ordinance refers to tourist homes, and stays at a tourist home cannot exceed 10 days at a time, and they cannot operate for more than 30 days per year. So it's very restrictive. And that's what we would be asking people to make application to today, or cease operations until other rules can be put into effect.
Okay.
I have a follow-up to that. How do you know these people are doing less than 30 days?
We don't. That's the start of the process. We've identified these individuals looking at VRBO, Airbnb, and those types of resources, and are doing this outreach. Again, it's the first step that we have that conversation and notify people of potential issues, and then it's up to them to come to us. And if they are in compliance, then that's great, and we can work through that.
So they wouldn't need to contact you back if they're doing 30-day flush finals. They wouldn't need to. They could just.
They would need to, yes, to respond to our summons. Yes.
So I made one follow-up question. What if they don't respond?
Well, then that's the escalated code enforcement process that we talked about. Next step would be then a notice of violation. If they don't respond in a certain period of time, to code, it's, deemed that they have committed the offense, and then we move forward with the next, tool we have.
Which would be
A
what?
notice of violation with assessed penalties.
Okay.
And those escalate after 10 days. The first violation is $100, then it goes up to day 30, $250, and beyond day 30, it would be $500 a day. So fines escalate quickly.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, not specific to the short-term rental issue. It's about code enforcement in general and the work that you're doing to move forward. I recognize that our code enforcement policies already exist, and they've been existing for quite some time. With the work that you're doing on the website, I'm curious to know if there are any forward-facing metrics or information that will be available on an ongoing basis to make sure that in fairly real time that the public can actually see the efforts that you're doing in code enforcement, working in the community.
So as part of the website update, there have been some discussions about showing some of the metrics that are completed cases or cases that are currently active. A part of the challenge of that is ensuring that that information doesn't lead back to any one individual or any less than positive purposes. And so we're still discussing how best to quantify that to include something like that. So it is a part of our plan, which is not quite up to the level of being able to do something that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Cameron, thanks so much for being here tonight. Appreciate it. I'm curious, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Do you feel like you have the resources that you need to be able to do your job well? And if not, you could wave a magic wand, what do you wish you had that you don't have to be able to meet the need of the city?
Everybody that is in violation having an open and positive mindset to change.
Great.
On that note,
Great answer.
Okay, I move that we allow that.
Second.
It's called a holiday miracle.
In regards to the tools that I have, I say that I definitely have the tools that I need to succeed. The mentorship is definitely there. Carol must have been nothing open and available. Tyler has been a great resource to talk with and solve a lot of the ongoing cases that have kind of passed down to me from his time as well. Outside of that, oh boy, it's I'm still pretty new to my position, so I mean, I've kind of seen some of the challenges that I faced out in the field. But to be able to say, is there one magic solution or one that can be made? Not quite yet.
Okay, that if you come up with that, come back here and let us know.
Right.
Okay.
yeah, one last thing, since you mentioned, you're complaint driven, I swear the 2009 Dodge runs. Just know.
Hey, Cameron, quick, couple things. Thank you for your report tonight. So I see stopped work orders. Can you just give me an idea of like what a stopped work order would look like in a city like ours that you would require that action?
Sure, actually, there's actually been pretty good cases just recently within the last couple of months. Since my time here, I've only issued food. I try really hard not to issue those if possible because of the wide scale effect. I'd rather bring somebody into compliance. But a good example of a stop work order would be unpermitted land clearing or leveling. Obviously, that has been pretty significant in its environmental effects, and without a proper study, we want to make sure that all is there quickly. So that's a pretty good case of one. But I would have the site do an inspection, people working there. And if they didn't have the proper permitting or studies done, I would consult our planners, and then if it was determined that again, they didn't have they hadn't taken the proper steps, or it was within an MDPA area or within a body of water like a river, then I would post it for.
Excellent, thank you. I'm very encouraged at the collaborative work that's going on, that it's not just a one-person show, that you guys are working collaboratively. So that's encouraging. So that usually results in better work product. And I guess, as far as the tools that Angie suggested, I hope, code enforcement can be an unsafe job. So I hope that your personal safety is being and those that respond to code enforcement complaints, that your personal safety and those that respond to those are being given as much consideration as is warranted. Because I read enough cases about code enforcement people having unfortunate encounters, and I wouldn't want to see something like that happen in our city. So I hope that if we need to give you tools or the city tools to help keep you safe and those safe, that we take that action.
Thank you.
Great. Anything else? Cameron, thank you very much. Russ, thank you. Let's move forward to source control ordinance. Shannon and Olin.
Good evening. I'm going to share my screen here. And we will be looking at presentation. And hello, I'm Olin Anderson. I'm the surface water coordinator at the city of Lake Stevens. Work with Shannon, our parent, and we have put together a source control ordinance and also addressing other parts of the Lake Stevens Municipal Code Title 11, which address stormwater and surface water. A quick overview of where we're going tonight with the discussion I'm presenting. Discussing some permit requirements, and then what is source control, some definitions, talk about what inspections we're proposing to do, what is progressive enforcement for this program, and establishing the program, proposing the code updates needed to have that, and some conclusion comments.
This is a permit requirement by the Washington State Department of Ecology, and it's called the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, Western Washington Phase 2 Municipal Stormwater Permit, which you may have recalled was approved by the council in last year. And we've been moving forward with addressing various requirements of this program, including developing the source control program, which is required by January 1st of next year. And to let you know, this program fills a gap. It's new, but not really, because it fills the gap between what are our existing permits that we issue for new development, like for construction, and industrial permits that the Department of Ecology issues, and the illicit discharge inspections that are in the code to go in and look for people dumping things or things spilling out, and it shouldn't be doing that. What this program would do is look at existing development and potential sources that might be coming from there, and how to catch a problem before it gets out of control. So source control is preventing and reducing pollutants to the stormwater at the source. It's achieved by using best management practices, which are called BMPs, and these are methods or means to prevent pollutants from meeting a stormwater at the source. It avoids discharge to the natural systems. So these are some of the code provision requirements in detail and kind of excerpted or paraphrased. And the permittees, which would be the city, adopts an ordinance requiring the source control BMPs be applied at existing land uses and activities, and have a progressive enforcement policy, and then use BMPs that are defined in the Stormwater Management Manual of Western Washington, and address all cities, all the businesses in the cities, at least the numbers of them, with inspections over 5 years, which comes out to about 20% per year. For us, about 100 city businesses to inspect. So let's talk about some BMPs now to understand what these are. The operational source control BMP is a non-structural practice. It's like setting up a policy, how you're going to look at things on your property, how you're going to manage stuff, how often you mow the lawn. Well, that's the kind of thought process. You know, it's not necessarily the actual thing. It's like a program that you have in-house for a business. And then a structural source control is actually something that physically separates the water from the pollution source. In this case, we see some protection of a stormwater vault here. We have bins that are in a catch tray, and then a roof over a fueling facility. Treatment BMP actually addresses the water after it had interacted with something polluting it, but cleans it up before it gets out to the system. So on the left here, we have a bioswale, and on the right, we have a treatment vault with some high-end canisters. So source control is something we need to understand. It's actually taking these BMPs and putting them in where the water is spilling out of a business or a facility, and protecting our municipal separate storm sewer system, or MS4, which is the collection system of that pipes that take it out to the natural resource. And in some cases, the natural resource itself kind of serves as the transport facility, and kind of folds in. So what gets inspected? Businesses. We see that businesses would be in this definition, a facility within the community, not necessarily someone who just has a business license, but actually has a place where they're conducting business. And then other utility or companies or agencies, if they're not under another permit, we would consider them. Commercial properties such as a multifamily housing complex or shopping center. And then again, approximately 20% of those would be inspected a year. And it doesn't include in our program typical residential based businesses that don't pollute for any reason. People that are generally permitted under ecology wouldn't necessarily need to have our reviews. Mobile businesses with a low potential for pollution, we could ignore these. It might be hard to find them anyway. And then construction sites, because they'll be permitted separately. Progressive enforcement is something that is key to the program.
starting on the left, we go from a voluntary compliance, moving over to the right with some enforcement. We do a site visit and then step up with issues if they're observed, with some education on how they might treat this, and see if they would consider getting more assistance to figure out how to really address a repair to the problem and set up some BMPs. If they install those and at a follow-up visit, those have been addressed, then it's resolved. But we could go up the ladder if they're not addressing it and provide letters of concern or warning notices. And until that we've determined that they're not really participating and they're not reacting, then we move into the steps of citation and beyond. The whole concept of the progressive enforcement, by the way, just to say, is Ecology wants this as part of the program so that they don't have to step in at stage one and teach people to put in BMPs. They want the permittee to do that. And if things get so out of control that it's a terrible problem, Ecology could step in. That would be an option. But that these earlier steps had happened or along the way, if possible. So establishing the program, the ordinance or other legal mechanism is required, and this would be for us an update to the existing Lake Stevens Municipal Code. Get this done before the end of the year, and then provide a list of businesses, and then we are currently working on that, and that'll be also needed in January once the program's going. And then have training and procedures to conduct the inspections. The surface water staff did get training in October. We've been putting together letters and data collection tools to figure out how to implement the program, and coordinating field experience with the Snohomish County to see how this actually occurs in another jurisdiction. And then plan on beginning those inspections next year. So I'm going to overview the approach to the code update, and just for fun, we're going with color coding the code. So orange is the source control program changes that would be needed. Some example text was provided by a technical assistance organization that kind of coordinates halfway between Ecology and the jurisdictions and figures out what kind of language works and things. And so they provided some samples. We've looked at other jurisdictions and what they've written, and took a deep look at the code that we have. And then as we were working through it, we have determined we need to clarify some stuff, get more consistency going, and restructure it. And these will be in green. And then the existing process that has been used to do various aspects of the storm or surface water program, both are sometimes just not quite right or need a little bit of fixing. And so sometimes there was some of these kinds of changes that were being made, and those are in yellow. Well, let's take a look here. I got 7 pages of this, so I'm going to try to fly through, and you'll know when we're nearing the end, so you're not rolling your eyes too much. I hope. Stormwater and surface water management is the title of the program, except it wasn't quite named right. Consistently, we use the word stormwater, but it wasn't in the title, so I just added that word water to storm, and that's the only change in the title of this section. And a new chapter was added. That's 1103, which is the next line here, and that's stormwater and surface water definitions, mostly compiled from text that was extracted from 1104 and 11.06. But we also added 8 new definitions, which help support the source control program. And then in the stormwater management utility, which is 1104, we only had to rename a term stormwater and then take the definition section out, and that one was fine. So we left that section pretty much intact. 1106 is where we did most of the modifications, stormwater management. So there's a number of restructuring and clarifications that were made, and we added text supporting the source control program. 1106 040 stormwater management review and approval required just had a new item B added. It says existing development, commercial properties and other properties would have BMPs for source control based on the stormwater manual, and the property owners are responsible to take care of their properties to protect water quality.
And then 1106-070, we added the term best management practices to this title, low impact development, because they're both related but not quite the same. And then we added item D, any property with potential pollutants that may need BMPs will have them. And this is regardless of any other aspect of the program, because BMPs just make sense. So if someone said you need BMP, but if we came over and visited someone and said you need some BMPs, or they say, well, I already got an ecology permit. Well, no, you still need those BMPs because they make sense, doesn't matter what your other permit says. So, but the emphasis of the program again is to look directly at certain properties and not necessarily other permitings. So again, proposed code updates here in regards to prohibited, allowable, and conditional discharges and connections. We added item E, hazardous discharges. Now, this was something, first, this section had to be renumbered because we took definitions out of it. And then we had to add this because it really supports the illicit discharge program. The term was in the definitions, but it wasn't really discussed on how to address it or identify it. And so that was put in here to just help the existing illicit discharge or illegal discharge program operate. And then it also supports the source control program, because at the upper end of a bad situation on a property would be a hazardous discharge. So the proposed code updates in regards to the source control program itself are mainly on this page, 1106-105. We have two sections in here, applicability and outreach and education. The applicability just basically says who gets the inspection, and it's about BMPs. And if they're not using BMPs, they get enforcement. And the outreach and education aspect is saying this is mainly what the program's about, doing some outreach and education and getting people to voluntarily comply. And we will try to teach as best we can. I thought I got rid of all this flying text. Sorry about that. Here we go. So the right of entry and inspection section is largely about how to get onto a property and take a look at it. There was some complex language in there, and it looks like someone was having a hard time, and several different attempts were put together to assemble this language that existed in the code. So some effort was made to clarify how it was put together and what goes on in an inspection and how we gained access and what would we do in cases of really bad situations where those hazards are existing. And then fees, enforcements, and penalties. It includes some of the section that was in 1106-110 and elsewhere, and it just kind of compiles it all together. And what we wound up doing was reordering things from low to high, because that's what we're kind of getting into, this idea of progressive enforcement. And then did a correction on this, because the item that was considered a misdemeanor was given a year's penalty in jail, which is beyond what the Washington Administrative Code allows for that definition. So it was scaled back to 90 days. And then we added a progressive enforcement section, which talks a lot about the educational component and process. However, it doesn't do it in great detail. That's given to a concept that will be more of an internal directive process that will be developed. But it's stated in this section of the code that there will be education, and education comes first, and an effort to get voluntary compliance. So on the 7th page, here we are, the last one, the construction of the chapter. This is something that the agency that was organizing the code modification recommendations said it was good to have. And it basically is designed to allow the city to say, we want to do this to protect stormwater, and we're not doing this to pick on people and particular businesses. It's designed to be something that is equitable and not necessarily unfair. And also that our staff implementing it are not doing it out of anger or being mean, that this is a requirement and they shouldn't be liable personally for like going onto a site and inspecting somebody. So it's basic, code language. And then this interpretation and more strict standards applies that are in this section. We're actually moved from another part of the code. So the concept of this sort of chapter was here. It just wasn't in its own place. It was expanded a little bit with some other similar language. And it was similar to other jurisdictions that had exactly the same, literally exactly the same sections in their code. So in conclusion, this program is required. We have to do it sooner or later, and to stay on track, we need to get it done by January 1st. It doesn't expand coverage of the regulation. It's very similar to what we would do to illicit discharge. It basically says we're going to start visiting businesses. We'll try to get to all of them within 5 years, or just about everybody, and try to do it in a manner that will help people get on board with understanding voluntary compliance with what's required, and also to clarify and be consistent. So with all these things, we're recommending adding this to a consent agenda eventually on December 13th. But meanwhile, I'm really open to feedback, input, and your thoughts about what we've worked on so far, and would like to see that City Council is kind of on board with this idea, and if there's issues, let's look at them.
I would say one great presentation, very easy to follow. Surface water management in general is something that is of interest in my day job. And I recognize that there are challenges, particularly in basically funding the work. Fees and penalties are something that's certainly called out in the work that you're doing. And I realize a lot of those penalties are codified in RCWs and WACs. I don't know how many of those fees or penalties are codified in our local ordinances, but the question that I would ask that's probably pertinent to developing this program over time is, are the fees that exist or the funding sources coming in through Department of Ecology actually sustainable for this body of work? That you have 100 bodies, you have 100 businesses or locations to visit currently. But of course, we expect to grow. That number is going to grow over time. Is this body of work sustainable with the funding sources that you're currently aware of?
Well, I could say a little bit to start with, and then I'll have to pass off to Shannon. But we've determined, about 100 businesses a year would be inspected, and breaking that down into what we need to get done every month. It would amount to basically each of the 3 main surface water staff would support staff would need to do an inspection a week and follow up as needed with that. But so 1 a week to stay on track. It seems feasible within our existing workload to achieve that. And I do know that this program is funded through Ecology, but outside of that, the budget numbers and response would be a Shannon question. So let her follow up.
Thanks, Olin. So Olin's correct. We do have this regulatory requirement to implement 20% of the identified businesses annually. And what that really looks like is these identified businesses are not every business here in the city. They are businesses with the potential to pollute. So we look at those as automotive, car washes, restaurants, and in some cases, we may look at as a complex. A good example would be like the Safeway complex. The Kimco Realty is the property manager there. So we would look at things mainly like, where is the dumpster placement? Are the lids of the dumpsters being closed? And so we started this process with the idea of gathering all of the business licenses, which really made the list and number of businesses to inspect astronomical. We have received some guidance from other jurisdictions who are also having to go through the same process, a lot of the phase 2 permittees. And we're starting to look at it a little bit different, and we're in the process of doing that right now. And the point of this is that number is going to decrease substantially. And so we actually anticipate, based on other jurisdictions of similar size and similar commercial area, that we would probably have around 100 to 150 in total, meaning we need to inspect 20% of that each year. So the number to inspect is less. And just for clarification, it's not every business would get inspected every 5 years. You may have a business that gets inspected infrequently because we find that there aren't any issues. And we may have a business that gets inspected more frequently because there are issues to deal with. And so the regulatory requirements in our permit do allow us that flexibility to tailor this program, which really fits the city's needs and the potential pollutant sources. Does that answer your question? As far as funding goes, though, we don't have identified any increased funding. We did have a new position open this year, which we are now fully staffed in the surface water program. So we do have staff capacity to do it. When we do have businesses and the number of businesses grow, it may be something that we need to look at our stormwater utility fees. The current resolution right now for our fees goes through 2024. And this will likely be something that we start looking at when we look at adjusting those fees. We also have a new permit that'll be coming out in 2024. And so we'll have to evaluate the additional regulatory requirements that come out in that new permit with the stormwater fees.
Thank you.
I have a question. You say businesses. What about developments that have a little pond? When I doorbelled for my campaign, I was all over this town and I saw a number of these little ponds, and people would tell me, okay, well, this is challenged because this has got garbage in it and stuff like that. Is that also something an HOA would be responsible for that, I'm imagining, but I'm wondering, is that something that surface water management would also be addressing?
Absolutely. It's addressed under a different program,
Okay.
Still part of the
Makes sense.
NPDES permit, and that's the inspection of stormwater flow control and treatment facilities. Those are inspected annually. So if we were to inspect one of those detention ponds and notice a large amount of garbage or an oily sheen or something, then we would address it as part of an illicit discharge.
Thank you, Shannon. I figured as much.
Shannon, isn't it the association's responsibility to send that into the city?
Pardon me?
Is it the responsibility of HOAs to send that, that the inspection and backflow testing into the city?
So it would be great if they did. We are still working on building out what that looks like for these private facilities. I would love to get to that point eventually where we did have a process where those facilities are inspected on the HOA and then those inspections are sent to the city. But there's still a lot of administrative management behind that as well. Right now, we do those inspections annually, and we work with the homeowners association or individual homeowners to come into compliance with the maintenance standards.
Thank you.
So Shannon, I would assume that part of the 150 that we may have that we're going to be inspecting is part of that city facilities.
Yes. So are you in reference to like the decant facility in the public workshop?
Sure.
Yeah. So those are actually under they are under our current NPDES permit, but they fall under a stormwater pollution prevention plan that we've established for each of those facilities. And they do get inspected under that plan. So they're part of it, but the source control program is really targeting private businesses. Other inspections do happen with city-owned facilities like our detention ponds, vaults, any kind of flow control and treatment, our city shop, our decant facility. Those are all inspected. It's just under a different regulatory programmatic component of the NPDES permit.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Our hope is to, we have some just minor grammatical things to clean up in this draft ordinance that we put in front of you today. And our hope is to bring it back next week for adoption. So if there are any follow-up questions, we do really appreciate any kind of feedback or discussion around it. Because we would like to adopt this at the next meeting.
You could feel free to send me an email or anything with the detailed concerns about what's written in the proposed ordinance.
Hey, Shannon, one input I would have is a suggestion, and I don't know how you do it, but our poor business owners get probably inspected by some three-letter agency every other week, and it's problematic and time-consuming for them. So any kind of coordination with to have the inspection day on this one and everyone shows up to inspect them would probably be ideal, probably not completely possible, but if we can somehow coordinate other inspections at the same time to help our business owners keep running their businesses and not dealing with government, be great.
I have to ask this question.
I knew you had one over there and I was waiting for it, but
Since a STR is a business, our STR is going to be regulated under this component, under this chapter.
They're likely not going to be potential polluters. And so when we talk about that, these are just single family residential homes. The only time that we would start investigating them as far as a source control or illicit discharge would likely be complaint based. And that would be if they're throwing garbage, for some reason doing oil changes or something in the driveway, along those lines. But they don't represent the type of business that would be considered this potential polluter that would possibly contribute pollution to stormwater or surface water on a regular operational standpoint.
So is the definition of commercial business defined in here?
It's Owen, is it?
It is defined in there as being not usually residential, but could be.
Can you point me
And
to
so
the
there could be-
section where that's at? Can you point me to the definition?
It would not be in the definition section, but it would be in the who gets inspected area of that code.
Which is what section?
I'll have to go back and look at that real quick.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now.
My screen is actually not letting me see it right now. There it is. Okay.
B, page 21. It's like,
It's 11.06105.
I believe it's. Yeah, I think 105 has items, 06040 has some, and but yeah, primarily 1106-105.
What page is that?
Section A. I don't have the code right here in front of me.
Starts on page 19.
But if you don't find that language adequately defines it and you would like to have some other proposed language, we can talk about that. To me, we put it in there in a way that it wasn't super specific. The thought was if someone's running something like a construction business out of their residence and has stockpiles of material that's washing off into the street, that would be an example of a home-based business that's not really meeting the objectives of a residential neighborhood. And
so Owen, I suppose under 1106-105A applicability, you do have residential properties conducting business activities. I suppose that could apply, could it not, to an STR?
It could, and I think that this is an important discussion item, and we can go back and look at the definitions. We really wouldn't be inspecting, though, all single family residential developments that have a business. So, somebody who's running a home business, an insurance agent out of their home, we would not be inspecting them for source control. We would be assuming that they are doing normal residential type practices, just as we do with any of the other residents here in the city. The times that we inspect those type of situations, just residential homes, is when we get complaint-based calls. Good examples of that are people washing their vehicle in their driveway and soap is running into the storm drain. People are changing their oil in their driveway. Usually a lot of kind of vehicle type related practices. If we start looking at excessive garbage. That's typically where code enforcement steps in, and I believe it's under a different title of our Lake Stevens Municipal Code.
Greg, and typically that's short-term rentals aren't considered commercial, right? It's the use versus residential.
Right, that's what our code says. They're not.
We don't have a code right now, Greg.
Sorry.
That's true, but that's true.
Yeah, that remains to be seen.
It's only the state law.
So you said, you mentioned something that the definition of the commercial is in maybe several different places in here, and I find that problematic. I would rather have a definition of what that means in one place where we're not having to search for it or anybody need to be searching for it. So I don't know if that can be done the way you've written the code or not, but I find that hard for me to understand. I came through here trying to find it. And 105 A is okay, that talks about the residential stuff, but what defines what a commercial entity other than that is, and I think it should be in one spot, so. That's just my opinion.
I would
Yeah,
agree.
we can go ahead and add that to the definition section. We have created this new section under Title 11 for definitions to pull all definitions out of other sections to make it more easily readable. So we can go ahead and look at that and add that into that definition section.
Yeah, I think that we've for a long time been trying to get our codes to be readable. And, for people that aren't 13 years on the council and reading this stuff all the time and, trying to figure it out. So if you want people to understand what their requirements are, you need to make it easily understandable for them to get and point them in the right direction so that they can find it. So that's just my opinion.
I would agree.
Anything else for Shannon and Nolan? All right, great stuff. Good work on this, and we'll look forward to it next week. And let's move forward with Sarah and your 5-year parks plan.
Absolutely. Kelly is getting this up on the screen. The 5-year plan is a single-page document that was passed out here on the document and is being shared as well for anybody else that wants to view it. What I did with this 5-year plan is I designed it at a very high level overview with goals and timelines for the various needs of the department. At the bottom, it also has a list of priorities listed in the order of importance, which was identified by myself to give future direction for the department. So I can go through these verbally, and you can stop me at any point if you have questions along the way, and then we can certainly see if I'm on the right track with what the city expects out of the future of the Parks Department with priorities and timelines for the goals. So what I did was I broke it through 5 years. You'll see the current quarter that we're in, ending 2022, for the purpose of finishing this year and letting you know what has been started and or what will be finished by the end of this month. 2023 was broken into quarters because there's a lot going on in there, and then pushing out to 2024 through the years 2027. I just put them as years since they turn into really larger goals that will take time. So going on currently in Q4, some of these will continue out to additional quarters, but to be ended by December 31st, we will finish all of the park walkthroughs and inspections with a list of all the needs from the inspections. That's where myself and 3 additional staff are walking every property that is owned by the city labeled a park. And we're looking for everything that has maintenance needs, usability improvements, anything that needs visual improvement, safety. And we're making lists for what needs to be repaired today because it's a high need, or things that will be repaired over the next week, month, year of time. Those types of inspections will occur yearly with me as the director and staff. Going into the next quarter, which has already been begun, we have a parks maintenance plans, which will be an internal guide so that we can analyze all of these properties that we do manage and make sure that we're on track with knowing who needs to go where with the resources that we have. Ensure the grass is cut, that the leaves are picked up, that things are painted, that all of the trashes are changed, bathrooms are cleaned. So it'll be an internal guide to make sure that we're planning correctly as we move forward and that nothing's missed. There will be a public facing one right down the line. But for the Q1 goal, that is an internal process. Also ending by Q1 of 2023, we'll be reviewing all of the administrative policies and procedures. So we're going through all of our applications, all of the rules that are public facing, how we handle those things internally, and making any changes or modifications where they need to occur. And then followed by that, we have currently started going through all of the ordinance, laws, everything that affects parks, and have started to red pen and draft changes internally so that we can bring those things forward to ensure our parks are aligned correctly with rules, ending by the peak of summer, Q2. The next goal, coinciding with the same timeline as mentioned prior, is going to be identifying, that should say classes. Apologize for the edit there. Events, recreational needs for the community. So we are right now already starting a list of all the events that we're going to be identifying for city running in 2023. And we're going to follow that up with any recreational classes, contracts that can be run, and starting to provide more recreation for the public. Continuing Q1 in 2023, these are things that are started and ended in Q1. We have playground inspections. This is with the Parks Director. I am a certified playground safety inspector. I have one staff taking that test, I believe, tomorrow, another staff taking it by January, and then a fourth staff will be getting recertified. So as a team, we will go out and with our gauges properly inspect all of our playgrounds to ensure that they are safe. And so we'll be making a list of repairs or sometimes playgrounds, once they start hitting that 20, 25, 30-year mark, have just been depreciated. So we will be analyzing all of that stuff. Our goal is always to make sure that kids are safe and that there are never any major accidents that could have been prevented. Playground inspections will then be set up based on frequency. Some will be every 30 days, some will be every quarter. Definitely major ones will occur once a year, but that's just the initial one there. We'll also be looking at the lake safety program that is officially under the parks belt. And so we just want to review anything already in writing, things like placing buoys. We need to set a timeline for when we are going to be doing that, as it won't be the same day as applications come in, and really set up a routine and make sure that our staff is safe in getting those things out as well. So just making sure all those standards are correct and in a findable location for the public as well as staff. Q1 and Q2, this is where we are going to be looking at maintenance and operations management standards. That will be the public facing document that goes out once it's ready. So that one will be reviewed by this group as well when it's to that final step. We'll also be looking at all of our private and public recreational areas on city property. These are use agreements. So some properties we own but don't manage. We have some playgrounds owned by HOAs on our property, usually in combination with storm drains. And then, of course, we have a couple places that we manage that aren't owned by us. So we'll be going through those agreements, making sure that they are up to date. Some of them may have been aged, and work on those if we need to. That'll be Q1 and Q2 of 2023, as well as all of our parks and recreation marketing. We want to make sure that not only our residents can find everything that they need, but people coming into the city as well. So we'll be going through our website and all web presence, because a lot of people grab our information and are duplicating it. We'll be looking at anything that needs to be printed on paper and where our stuff is advertised within our parks as well. Going out another step to Q2 and Q3, we'll be looking at internal park needs assessment. So really just doing some informal future planning based on everything we've seen. Where do we start? We see as a staff, we need to start going in the future. Then we'll start working with the Parks Advisory Board, and that'll gear us up for the very next steps of ensuring our vision and mission statement is correct and guiding us as a department. That'll be Q3 for 2023. We'll be coming right out of summer. We'll be looking at our staff analysis to see, hey, how did we do? What do we need to be gearing up for future years as we start planning out? We'll also be starting a Parks ADA transition plan, or I shouldn't say starting, but review what exists and ensure that our parks are fully covered there. So that'll be Q4, pushing into 2024. I will also be infusing pieces of the ABA, which is the Architectural Barrier Act. Those are the items that federal parks follow, or when we take federal money, it goes a step further than ADA, which is downtown sidewalks and libraries, which have very specific standards, and it goes into other portions like boat launches if they aren't covered under ADA, or trails that aren't paved, for instance. And so it follows the same building blocks, but we'll be applying that to areas that we need to within our parks. Parks and Recreation Strategic Plan will come in 2024. County park acquisitions, I've just put down here 2024 and future. That's where I want to start any conversations about will we obtain Cavallaro and when, or looking at other locations. I know we just obtained Sunset Park, and we want to make sure that we align future staff with any park building or acquisition to ensure that we are well prepared to maintain those in addition to what we already have under our belt. I have the comprehensive plan for parks, recreation, and open space listed in 2025, as that is the next routine date for us to review that one. And then it will be followed by a Parks and Recreation System Master Plan. A lot of these elements are also derived from accreditation through National Recreation and Parks Association. And so we're going to be following that as best as possible so that when we ourselves are ready to tackle accreditation, a lot of the legwork will already be ready to go. I then have all of the Parks and Recreation Director priorities set below in order of importance, and I've listed these currently as number 1, ensure parks are safe for all users. Number 2, improve park usability. This will include a variety of recreational opportunities and accessibility. 3, manage and maintain current parks to city standards. And then 4, acquire or build new parks and recreational opportunities to increase the city's service level. And that concludes everything on this paper. And welcome to discussion, questions, comments.
Under your Parks Recreation Marketing on Q1 next year, I would suggest you also look at the Visitor Information Center, make sure we have the right information at the Visitor Information Center.
Thank you, absolutely.
I have a question about the lake safety program and revision in buoys. Are we allowing buoys? I don't know if the chief knows this but we have buoys that we pull in and take out every year. Isn't that still correct? Public Works.
Yeah, so it used to be under the blanket of Public Works, and it's officially coming over to the Parks Department. So yes, as a homeowner on the lake, if you would like a buoy 100 feet from your house, there's an application for that. There is a fee for that also.
So that would be part of the buoy
That'll be
program.
parks. Yep, and I'll also be expanding that into the swimming buoys, making sure they're replaced regularly. Do we remove them? Do we leave them out all year?
Great.
That sort of thing.
Any other questions for Sarah?
This is great. Thank you.
Yeah, good stuff.
Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Sarah, very much for that. Okay, we're going to move into next week's agenda. It's in front of you at this time. You'll see that due to our choosing of a new city council member next week, we're proposing that we make an earlier time frame. I just want to make sure that what that means for getting off work and being here on time. Everybody, Sean, will you have any problems with that? Probably not.
Actually, we have a 2023 budget adoption at the health.
Oh,
district
for the
next
health
week.
district. Okay.
That might be a little thing.
Okay, all right. But due to, we're doing 15 minutes per person for interviews, correct, Kelly?
Correct. And if you have 6 people, which you'll decide tonight, that's 90 minutes of just interviews. And then
Not
you'll need to,
counting the transition time.
yeah, and then I imagine you want to put 5 minutes in between each possibly, and then you'll have your deliberation time.
So we're proposing us what start time, Kelly?
We talked about 5 or 5:30. I think 5 might be hard for people, but 5 or 5:30.
Mayor.
So
Yes.
I'm sorry, so and that would be part of
Part
the
of the overall
council
meeting.
part, okay, I didn't see it on the agenda, so I wasn't sure where that would be.
I have it listed there as council interviews after approval of agenda.
Oh, got it,
And
got
then
it.
we
Okay.
go into the rest of our business, like take care of that first. But I just think we need to call the meeting to order. They'll go into council interviews.
Are the interviews public?
Yes.
Your deliberations can be an executive session. But your interviews are public.
That's what we did last time.
Yep.
Yep.
We all had a certain question, I think, that we asked.
So what we'd like to ask the applicants is to stand in the lobby. Out of respect for everybody else. And I will bring them in as the schedule shows.
And we would have asked you to stay out there, but you were in Hawaii at the time.
No, I'm talking about when we
Oh,
interviewed
no, yeah, we
for.
did.
Oh, yeah, there was the whole public there and
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
I think you should absolutely start early.
What's that?
Yeah, we were-
Won't be at the,
Sitting in the meeting.
So when we did it, it was up at Ebenezer, and I don't think people knew. There was a couple people in the,
Yeah, there was a
in the
couple.
audience, but there wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so I do have a health district board meeting.
okay, so there's a health district board meeting, and that goes till ends up
3 to 5.
3 to 5, right? So it might be a little difficult. I'll tell you what, let's try to do 5:30. If you can get back here in time, if not, we'll just go with 6 and order pizza.
I'll be here by 5. I'll be here by 5:30. I could be here by
South Lake.
15
What?
if you wanted to
So,
really push it.
okay, does that sound okay?
So I'll
Well,
need to notice it.
we have to
So
notice it.
5:30. Is that?
I can be here by 5:15.
5:30 would be a round number.
5:08.
5:09? Do I hear 5:09?
Okay, so let's notice it for 5:30, Kelly.
I'm seeing into the future a great big wreck on the trust.
So having said that, so on this, if we do council interviews. Do we wait to go into executive session to deliberate, or do we do it directly after?
I think if we're going in and out of interviews, it's gonna take a long time, so I think we wait till afterwards.
Right, but I'm talking about immediately afterwards. Do we do executive session? So should that be right after?
What we could do
council
is
interviews?
start our business meeting at 5:30, take care of all of our business. And then the end of your, the remainder of your meeting is interviews and deliberation.
And then deliberation,
When's Sean's last day?
the 16th.
Yeah, because you can't appoint anyone until it's vacated, until he's gone. of course. And you can't, of course, participate in the vote.
Right.
Which would also make sense then to have that be, can't participate in the vote.
No,
Are you telling me I have to vacate now?
I like the idea of having it at the end. And then I also think, candidates are here and observing the work that.
Okay, so we'll push council interviews to the end with executive session after that for deliberation on the interviews.
I think that makes sense.
Okay,
And we'll just say our business meeting we'll decide what that's gonna be, 5:30 to. I'll check with staff
okay,
and then we'll start interviews.
okay.
Is Sean gonna be able to be here by 5:30? Because if we start the meeting, he's supposed to be recognized.
I'm at the
Mercy.
Yeah, I'm at the mercy of the Board of Health.
Yeah,
Maybe we do the other
We can always
business and then push him down the line.
I was made that.
yeah, we can do it.
Like we did with
Just like
executive.
we did. Yeah,
5:30 is a challenge.
I have a question for Greg. You said we couldn't appoint until he resigns effective, but we can't appoint with an effective date, right? Could we appoint?
well, we can announce, we just can't swear in until after the effective date.
I will verify this, but I don't think you can appoint until the position is vacated, because there's no. Can you appoint someone in advance of the person leaving office? I don't believe you can do that.
Okay, Let us know.
You have to wait till the person vacates the office and then you can appoint someone to fill it. You can do all the screening and get to where you think you're gonna go. Before that happens.
You're just like-
Okay, but the law requires position be vacated before you could actually take a vote to. Okay, this is the person.
I would
who wanted
actually
to fill it.
take the vote.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we can't make a
Can
decision.
we come to a consensus without a vote?
Well. Again, even the executive discussion, when you discuss qualifications, you're gonna discuss qualifications, you're not gonna take a vote as to.
Can't vote.
You can't vote in executive session, so that's just a reminder.
Well, at that point, then you have one of these things on here in the on this one is to cancel the rest of December council meetings.
Right.
So
Mayor.
we'll be doing that.
Mayor and council. I think we are making this more difficult than it is.
Yeah.
I think I just need to leave earlier. There's no changing whether or not I'm leaving.
Darn it.
So,
Is this, what are you doing? Like effective immediately or?
Well-
what's the deal?
Back to the 12th.
I mean, I think the point is as long as I'm no longer on the council by the start of the meeting, then the plan is very simple and everything can move forward.
So you're saying, change the date to the 12th so that we can appoint on 13th?
That would be preferable.
Okay.
Councilmember Frederick, will you at least come to the meeting on the 13th as a citizen? So we can honor your service.
I'm just trying to solve a really simple.
No,
Yeah,
thank you.
I
Yeah.
will be here.
Okay. All right.
So if you could send me an updated email with that due date,
Yeah.
your resignation date, that'd be ideal.
Simplest solution.
Okay.
Done.
Great. Thanks, Sean. Okay, so move council interviews, executive session to the end of the session. Done. All right, great. Woo. All right, we're gonna move into executive session now and we're gonna talk two subjects. Not yet. One is gonna be potential litigation and second is gonna be discuss qualifications of candidate for appointment to elective office. We're gonna probably take. Let's start with an hour. On this one. And
And
But then if we don't go an
yeah,
hour,
do understand you have to wait
if
an
we don't
hour.
go an hour, we still have to sit here.
Yeah,
all right, 30 minutes.
Great.
Very optimistic people here. 30 minutes
Thank you.
and there will be action to follow on that,
okay, so potential litigation will be first, and we think that'll be approximately 10 minutes.
correct?
And then the second topic will start with 20 minutes, is what I'm hearing.
All right,
Okay, so it's 7:42 right now, and we will be back in 30 minutes. 8:20, no, yeah, 8:02.
so we'd ask everyone to clear. Thank you for being here. You can stick around in 30 minutes. We may be back with some decisions.
8:12, yeah, 8:12, yeah, thanks. Oh, I'm sure, but I don't want to do something. Have it be here, and then I just be back in 40, and then I said, 15.
Oh, really?
For the auditor's office, we have to get a timer.
Okay, it is 8:12 and the council has requested an additional 48 minutes, so we are gonna go till 9 o'clock.
outside or no?
Are we back on?
We're back on.
Okay, so we're back from executive session and can I get a motion?
Did we allow anyone back from the?
There's no one out there.
There was no, there was two ladies that walked out.
Okay.
I'd like to move to propose a list for candidate interviews for the open position on the Lake Stevens City Council to interview Brian McManus, Christopher Rich, Jessica Bilkovich, John Huber, Ryan Donahue, Samir Nasser, and Todd Welch.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to interview those 7 folks next Tuesday, and I have a second. Any discussion?
What time will that interview be?
That interview, well, the meeting will begin at 5:30. It will be the last topic on the agenda.
So somewhere around 7:30?
Sure.
Actually, I think the agenda is
It's pretty light agenda.
It's pretty light.
Probably gonna be
6:30.
right around
They
30, and then I will put them all, their names in a hat, and I will draw out the orders.
Right.
I'll second the motion.
Already seconded.
It's already seconded. We're in discussion. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, taking a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Have a great evening, great weekend.
That was way better.